Hello, and welcome to the THC Show. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson, and this is the show about truth, hope, and change. Much needed in today's world, that's for sure. On the show today, we'll have 8 out of 10 Glenn from Cannabis.ca join us for the 420 session and beyond. We'll have our letter of refusal from Health Canada, and we will visit the Healing Wave CSP RV. It's been a rather emotional roller coaster the last 10 days or so, for sure. We talked on last week's show about Cannabis Day and what the mayor did there. His brutal assault on our right to protest, his abuse of power, contempt of the populace, and criminal misuse of public funds. And even more alarming than all of that is the media blackout. We've been ghosted by the mainstream media on what happened there on Canada Day. We had dozens of police officers, the park entirely fenced off, and at one point the police were swarming the protesters that were there. It got violent. One of the protesters, landlord Steve Jensen, who's been on the show several times, was thrown to the ground. He needed to be taken away in an ambulance and spent the evening in hospital. And now there's a viral video that's emerged over the weekend of our mayor irresponsibly using alcohol in public in a chug a beer contest on a stage in Kitsilano. These are very disturbing times, that is for sure. Much more disturbing than that, though, is that we got our final letter of refusal from Health Canada regarding our application for the CSP. This is appalling and outrageous, and I can't believe that they actually did what they did. I'm going to read you the letter that we sent them in response to their intent to deny. I know I read it on the show once before, but I think it's important to revisit it and see what it is that they're saying no to at this point. So the letter that I wrote them went as such. Good day. It's Neil Magnuson from the Cannabis Substitution Program. Oh, pardon me. That was the letter that I sent to the Health Minister. This is the letter that I sent to Health Canada. Good day. With all due respect, we find your intent to refuse our application outrageous and unacceptable. There are some bottom lines that are not seemingly being recognized by your department. Our record of efficacy, proper low barrier access supply, multiple solutions and obvious exemption paths, and our shared vision and value for health and wellness. First and foremost, we have rescued hundreds of people from addiction over the past 6 years of this public health emergency, and we continue to do so every day. One would think that a 6-year-long successful demonstration should be enough. We were even deemed essential by Vancouver Coastal Health during the pandemic. As the science clearly shows, cannabis, primarily in the form of high-dose edibles, is very effective for many people in assisting them through withdrawal and in replacing the use of addictive and dangerous substances. This is by far the most important aspect of how we are helping people. During these past 6 years, we have been on the front lines of this epidemic of overdose and death. We have truly become experts on what is needed as we have continually worked to meet the needs of those afflicted. Our program is in collaboration with VANDU, the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. Since the first 3.5 years of working from the VANDU offices twice a week, we have operated 8 hours a day, every day for the past 33 months from this location on Cordova near Maine. We were in the storefront for over 5.5 months before being forced into the RV for the last 28 months, providing low barrier access to the cannabis options that are otherwise out of reach for the majority of marginalized people that we are helping. Oh dear, I did it again. Funny. Just bear with me, folks. You're dealing with a guy that's not good at this kind of stuff. Denying our application is not a possibility without serious or injury or death. If we were to stop providing the low barrier cannabis option, it would send hundreds of people to whom have come to rely on us into despair, with many going back to the poison drug supply. This is clearly stated in our application and backed up by the letters from Dr. M.J. Malloy and by Professor Zachary Walsh, along with personal testimonials from our clients. We are keenly aware of this, and that is why we simply cannot stop. In Professor Walsh's submission, a recognized expert in the field, he states that our program needs to be protected, supported, and expanded, with no barriers placed in front of it, and it is your job to determine how to do that by way of an exemption or a special licensing of some sort. Oh my goodness, why do I keep doing that? Back we go again. Da, 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 da. Our application is not regarding a proposal of something that might be effective. It is an application for you to license or provide an exemption for what has been ongoing and what has definitely been hugely successful and without any problems for over a half a decade. The bottom line is that our efforts have proven beyond any doubt to be extremely effective and, most importantly, safe in rescuing vulnerable people from addiction and death, with human lives in the balance. During this public health crisis, it is the responsibility of your department to support solutions that work. The solution we have been demonstrating is, by far, the best that there is, as all in this neighborhood would testify to. Cannabis is the real safe supply. High-dose edibles are a gateway out of addiction. It is imperative that you not refuse our application, but instead enter into dialogue with us about how we can keep making this work even better. Secondly, with respect to using a regulated supply, we would also appreciate this, with the bottom line being it can't increase the costs or compensate the medicinal value. For this, there are a few potential remedies already previously referred to in our application. You could provide licenses or exemptions for those who have been supplying us over the years. We have very successfully demonstrated the safety of our supply. There has not been a single problem or complaint in over 6 years. We also test everything before it goes out, and this by itself should really be enough, along with our track record, to be afforded your support. By far, the best way would be to license our current suppliers who have more than proven their methods and products are safe. They deserve and desire to be legal producers. But what is also important is that in many cases, these are people deeply concerned for their own personal reasons and want to help. In some cases, due to having lost loved ones to this epidemic. Why should they not be afforded an opportunity to help if they meet reasonable standards? Second, there's also the option of allowing current licensed producers to provide us with the regulated cannabis that they destroy due to overproduction or other reasons at no cost or low cost. This would provide us with a regulated supply and save the producers the cost of destroying it. There is also the option of allowing for some members of our society, the Serious Hope Society, to be designated growers and produce for specific clientele or the clientele broadly. But this option is much more complicated and would likely pose unjustified barriers, again putting vulnerable people at risk. What is most wrong about the present legalization scheme is ignoring the glaring hypocrisy when comparing it to alcohol, tobacco, and other problematic substances, is the gap that we are trying to cover with our program. Where am I? The scheme leaves out the most needy and vulnerable people who are not able to afford the artificially and unjustified high prices being charged by the legal system, but mostly because there is no availability of high-dose edibles, which are crucial in assisting addicted people through withdrawal, as well as being very effective in dealing with pain, anxiety, PTSD, sleep disorders, and other drivers of addiction. This last sentence is very important to understand. The number one barrier to quitting is withdrawal, and addressing the underlying drivers of addiction goes a long way in preventing the disorder and in exiting it. With respect to the goals of the Cannabis Act, to provide access to quality-controlled, regulated cannabis and to deter illegal activity, it is clear that the Act itself is the largest barrier to achieving those goals. As prices are often out of reach for many people, along with other barriers to access that are part of the Cannabis Act, people are driven to the unregulated market. Even worse, in this neighborhood and other poor neighborhoods across Canada, the lack of access to cannabis combined with the easy access to opioids and dangerous street drugs, as is evidenced by the number of people overdosing on those drugs, also drives people to seek relief from other dangerous and unregulated substances, putting their lives at risk, while increasing the use of unregulated drugs, including hard drugs, increasing illegal activity, and enriching bad actors. This is completely counter to the goals of the Cannabis Act. As for the requirement that we only accommodate people with a medical professional's oversight and permission, we find this to be untenable and unacceptable. This barrier must be removed. It would eliminate the vast majority that are relying on us, resulting in unnecessary suffering and death for hundreds of people. And these are some of the most vulnerable and at-risk people. There are millions of mainstream Canadians who presently are unable to find a doctor, let alone those that we help, who are marginalized and undesirable to doctors as patients. There is also a large number of Canadians who fear doctors and the medical system, especially in this neighborhood. They would not even get a doctor if they could. These people are disabled, either physically, mentally, or by their addiction, and they deserve protection. To remove and restrict their access to cannabis, as stated repeatedly, especially high-dose edibles, is a direct and cruel attack on these disabled Canadians and will be, for many, a death sentence. Discreet, low-barrier access is crucial. Your more than 2.5-year delay and counting in approving our application has undoubtedly already resulted in many more deaths that would have otherwise not have happened had easy low-barrier access to affordable cannabis, and especially high-dose edibles, been granted in a timely fashion. With respect to the other 3 possible paths to an exemption, public safety, public interest, or for research, there is no doubt that we qualify on all 3 accounts, not just one. First, with respect to public safety, to say that our program is not about public safety is either willful blindness on your part or a complete lack of understanding in the origins and the value of our efforts. The CSP began, oh dear, I did it again. Okay. Just give you a chance to let what I've already said sink in. The CSP began 6 years ago in response to the public health crisis. That is our whole focus. We are rescuing people from addiction to prevent overdoses. In doing that, we also improve their overall health through the other benefits of cannabis, like pain and mood management, improved sleep and appetite, and the many other well-documented health benefits. We also provide an ear and a calm, safe space. We also give out socks and hand warmers when it's cold, along with other donations of much-needed items as they come in. We work in concert with other harm reduction and service providers, including the Aboriginal Front Door Society and the police, counseling those in need with some hope and direction. We have helped in many ways and in many situations where public safety is at issue. Second, the public's interest. What we are doing is definitely in the public's interest. The ongoing problems with homelessness, poverty, mental illness, and addiction are constantly in the media and part of citizens' daily dialogue. Our efforts are front and center in many of those conversations, with several media outlets, other interested parties, and harm reduction initiatives across the country supporting us and awaiting your decision. Third, with respect to research. As for whether or not we can provide research potential, our program provides an amazing opportunity to gather important data from the front lines and already has. For the 5.5 months that we were in the storefront, before being forced to operate from an RV, we captured data by way of a series of questions updated by our clients upon each visit. The limitations of working from an RV put that on hold, but there is still ongoing research plans, and great opportunity and potential to gather more data than that can be extremely valuable. One member of our team, Brix Carlisle, has several university degrees, and he is currently working on a study involving our clientele and has spoken to Dr. Malloy about working together on a research project. Another member of our team is a certified master herbalist who also still have the hundreds of pages of data collected during our time in the storefront. Right now, there are also university researchers who are monitoring the program to gather data regarding opiate addiction and high-dose cannabis use, etc. And also Dr. Malloy is willing and anxious to lead more research, but is awaiting your exemption special license to be approved. Are you able to hold off on denying while the research continues? Are you able to provide an exemption for research purposes? The bottom line on who we are and who you are. I believe we are aligned with your values at Health Canada. We really need to work together on this to find a way to continue. The lives, health, and well-being of so many vulnerable at-risk people are at stake here. Perhaps if you or some of your staff came to spend some time with us, you would have a better understanding of why it is important that we not stop, and how profoundly beneficial our program is and has been for the hundreds of poor souls that we help every day. The team of people that make this work are extremely proud of what we do for the desperate and suffering people we help. Many people thank us every day and comment about how the options we are providing is life-changing and life-saving. So perhaps if you came and monitored our efforts and listened to the people we help, then you would understand why denying our application is not a possibility from our perspective. Oh my goodness. I did it again.
You let it sink in.
I'm sure you can appreciate that we have come to know and empathize with most of those who use our services over the years. In many ways, they're like family to us, and I know many of them feel the same way about us. Turning our backs on them at this point would be cruel and unusual to both them and our team, not to mention unjustified. How could we possibly do that? Could you? Would you? We can't, and we won't. Just like prohibition and now gross overregulation makes criminals out of people, millions of people who otherwise wouldn't be, your inaction and ultimate refusal, if that's what you decide, will make myself and the team of angels who work with me into criminals, as we would find ourselves with no choice but to defy your decision and continue to save lives and better the lives of those people in need. We implore you to do the right thing, to put the lives and health of people ahead of corporate profits and institutional apathy, to allow and support what we continue to prove every day is an extremely valuable weapon in the war against addiction, overdose, and death. We would welcome dialogue about how we can comply with reasonable regulations and requirements to even better be able to help the citizens who are afflicted and suffering. Withholding and restricting access is resulting in death and misery and is completely contrary to the goals of public health and safety. The bottom line here is that vulnerable people's lives should be what's most important, especially to Health Canada. In the public's perspective, however, the importance seems to be more about capitalizing on the sale of cannabis and monetizing the overdose crisis than actually saving lives and bettering people's health. That view is disgusting and shames our public service virtue. We prove that's what's important, people's lives, and so can you. The bottom line should be about recognizing the common sense bottom lines. We are in a public health emergency, and easy, low barrier access to cannabis, especially high-dose edibles, will save lives. That's the letter that I sent to them, and that's the letter that they ignored, not taking into account anything that was said in there. I'm not going to read you the letter that they sent me, it's a little too long and we're short on time in this section of the show. But they vaguely say that we didn't send them enough details about how we could use a regulated supply, and we didn't send them enough details about how the research could be, assisted by us being here. It's a nonsensical letter. After having read what I just read to you, that letter they sent seems to be that they didn't read it at all. So here we are. Now, 4:19, that's where we are. You know what that means. Roll them if you haven't already. You got 1 minute. Fill your pipe, whatever you want to do. It's time coming up for the 4:20 session. So now the fight really begins. Now we're sitting here feeling even more at risk with Health Canada denying our application and wondering whether they're going to send in the enforcement arms to try to stop us from what we're doing. Will we end up in jail? Will they seize our RV? Will they actually be able to stop us from what we're doing? Time will tell. We're not going away. We're not stopping. We'll see what happens. I guess the ball is back in their court again. But bottom line, we do not have the ability to stop what we're doing. As ethical human beings, we cannot turn our backs on these people. I could hear their cries and their distress already if we tried to do that. I won't do it. They'll have to force me to do it. We'll see what happens. Well, now it's 4:20, so that means Mr. Wells is here.
Sir Magnuson.
Sir Wells. Are you gonna tell him why we're calling each other Sir now?
Oh, you can tell him too. We
were very, very honored and privileged to be interviewed on the Maverick News show.
Yes.
2 Sundays ago, And I think that we did such a good job of explaining the situation here that they wanted us back for a second week. There was a lot of people that entered into the chat and had questions. And so we went back again this last Sunday, and we spent almost 2 hours asking or answering questions for people that had them. And at the end of the show, they did what they seldom do on the Maverick show, but they decided to do it for both Glenn and I, and we were knighted into the Maverick family.
Yes.
So, Sir Glenn?
Sir Magnuson.
My dad was Sir for a while.
Was he?
I don't know if I feel like a Sir.
I don't think I feel like a sir either, but I get called sir occasionally when people don't know
I'm honored and humbled by the
I thanked him in
know,
the post, yeah. I shared
that,
shared it. It was very nice of him.
well, because he's a smart feller.
He is.
Unlike Health Canada. Health Canada doesn't think that we should be knighted or given any acclamation or we shouldn't be commendated for what we're doing at all. We should be arrested, maybe spend some time in jail, say we're sorry.
Oh yeah. Write an essay. Write an essay.
We were arrested and charged a year ago this last May, and my two co-accused decided to plead guilty because they were told by their lawyer they'd get a complete discharge if they did that. Well, that's not completely true, apparently. The complete discharge will be at the end of, first, if they write a 2,000-word essay as to why it was wrong what they were doing. Well, George absolutely refused. I haven't talked to Andrew. I don't know what his stance was. But George refused to do that. So they had to go back into court, and the judge decided that instead he could do 40 hours of community service. And now his... whatever she is, I don't know who she is. Well, she's the Crown. She's the representative of the Crown that's overseeing his order there. She's called him a couple times already to say that in her opinion, 40 hours of community service is not enough of a punishment for what he was doing here in helping hundreds of people feel better. So she was going to try to get him 100 hours. And it was told that, no, the judge gets to decide what the penalty is, not you. And you can go away and he can do his community service and that will be the end of it. But it is just so disgusting, all of this stuff from the Crown. The Crown has spent and will end up spending upwards of $1 million to take me into court and try to find me guilty. And then what they want is 6 months of house arrest. So for 6 months... I'm not allowed to go out of my house. This is my house. I live in the shop. I don't have another place to live. So I get to continue the work that we're doing, I guess, during the day. We'll see how that all shakes down. And then and then I can't go out at night. Well, how do they justify this? I mean, it's insanity, isn't it? That the Crown thinks that the proper reparations for whatever damage they think we've done over these last 6.5 years should be repaid by keeping me off the streets for 6 months in the evening. That ain't gonna help nobody. That ain't gonna help nobody.
No.
I never hurt anybody when I'm out on the streets there. I am not a menace at all. In fact, I'm a citizen on patrol, always have been.
Yep.
If I see somebody in trouble, I help them.
Yep.
If I see something going on that's not right, I try to make it right. So taking me off the streets for 6 months is actually a detriment to the public. It certainly ain't going to get them back their $1 million that they have spent. And you know where they spend that $1 million is on paying the Crown and his assistants to put together all of that thick disclosure that they presented to us, which had no mention of any victim in it anywhere. That had to cost a whole lot of money. I personally have had 16 court appearances leading up to what is now going to be us flipping the switch on them and making a constitutional challenge, a charter challenge, out of their delinquency in providing a license during a public health crisis to what is absolutely proven to be one of the best measures to counter this public health crisis. They're going to spend that much money and get zero, in fact, a minus for the public.
Yeah.
And the public has no say in that. And if I wasn't saying it out loud on this program right now, the public would never even know.
No.
And this has been going on for a very long time.
Except for Mr. Maverick's help. He's really put us out there in the public a bit more with his show and then the 2 appearances. So
well, did I mention? I guess I mentioned on his show that they were spending about $1 million. So sure, we got it out there.
He's the only media that's really caught on to us, right?
And he's not mainstream media. He's more mainstream than we are. We're Pot TV.
Yeah.
But it's not the mainstream media.
No.
The shutting out of what's going on by the mainstream media is extremely concerning.
Mm-hmm.
This is, hey, buddy.
I think we forgot something. I think he's trying to tell us something. Yeah.
You can go get him.
You want me to go get him something? All right.
Okay. That the mainstream media does not cover what we're doing here is an absolute abomination and is a real glimpse into how we are not being told the whole news. They ghosted what happened on Canada Day. They didn't want anybody in Canada to know that there was nearly a riot, that there was a huge expenditure of somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 by our city's mayor, the worst mayor we've ever had in the history of Vancouver already. They don't get to find out about that because the media isn't reporting on it. So don't believe everything you read in the media and recognize there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on in the media that you don't like at all.
Right?
This is all a very, very disgusting look for our country. I have a very dear friend who's from China, and she is horrified at our government here in Canada. She tells me about it all the time, and she's from China.
Wow.
They don't have the same level of drug addiction, homelessness, and poverty and mental illness. Mm-hmm. So she says, I've never been there.
Yeah.
But she's shown me videos, she's talked to me, she's lived there. She knows that their government also is oppressive, but she doesn't think it's as oppressive as the government that we have here. Chew on that for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. We're in trouble here, folks. We're in big time trouble. We need to solve this. I'm not sure how we do it. But
well, the latest poll says that he's down, and the other guy's ahead now by 5 points or something like that. So,
but the truth is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it always
the
changes,
truth is,
right?
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether you get the red puppet or whether you get the blue puppet or whether you get some other colored puppet.
Yeah.
These are just puppets for the corporate elite that are exploiting us, oppressing us, and monopolizing the cannabis sales for the biggest ones that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
That's huge. And letting people die.
Letting people die.
They don't care. Right?
They don't care. In fact, when people die, they get to monetize it. They get to say, oh, people are dying. We need to do something. So let's spend a few millions of these tax dollars that we've got to try to prevent that. And hey, let's give them to our friends over here, and they can provide some safe needles or safe supply or something like that. And nothing really gets done. The people in this neighborhood will tell you they don't see any of that money that the federal and provincial governments continue to say that they're spending to try to address this crisis. What we're doing, and have been doing for a long time now, is putting somewhere between 10 and 15,000 milligrams of high-dose edibles out every day in this neighborhood.
That much now, eh?
That much.
That's a lot. That's gone up since the last time you think you.
And you would think that would put a dent in things? Well, you're right, because the latest reports on the division of the deaths in this province, there's about between 6 and 7 people die every day of the fatal drug supply. Only 14% are coming from this neighborhood, where you would think the vast majority would come from. 86% is in the other areas where they have no access to the CSP unless they drive into town and they know about us. But this is definitely demonstrable that what we're doing is helping, and yet still they have the audacity to deny a simple piece of paper with a signature on it that would just allow us to keep doing what we've been doing for the last, 3 years here and counting. And they won't do it. They've managed to hire some unethical, immoral, soulless bastards to work at Health Canada who somehow can ignore the letter that I wrote and send us a denial. I'm beside myself in frustration and being depressed about it.
Me too. It's not good.
It's not good at all.
No.
This drug war has been going on in Canada for 100 years. We have millions of good Canadians with otherwise no criminal record, but they have a record for possession, or for the possession for the purpose of cannabis. How disgusting is that? It's been an emotional roller coaster this last week.
Yeah.
We laid to rest Jerry Martin. You want to talk about a victim of the drug war? That's Jerry Martin. I knew 2 Jerrys in my lifetime. I knew Jerry Martin before he got raided. The Jerry Martin was on top of the world, called the King of Compassion, operating an illegal dispensary in Whitewood, Saskatchewan, a small little town on the #1 highway, halfway between Regina and Winnipeg, Brandon actually. And he thought that legalization was on the horizon, that he would be included in the new legalized world, that his dispensary would then be grandfathered in. But that's not what happened. They raided him. They told him to stop, for one thing. Cruel and unusual again. To ask him to stop providing what the people in his town and for miles around were coming to him for. People that would, like us, that would have been thanking him every day for being there and providing that for them. And he's supposed to say no to them? Close his doors and walk away and walk to his house a couple blocks away from his dispensary where people would be knocking on his door front and back all day and night, begging him to help them? He couldn't do it. He wouldn't do it, just like us. Jerry was not only one of the kindest people I ever met, he was one of the bravest people I ever met. They raided him. They arrested him. They put him in handcuffs and shoved him into a police car. They stole all of his belongings, his bank account, his house, his cars. They forced him out of Whitewood. It wasn't long after that the first crack house showed up in Whitewood. No access to cannabis to offset the use. A city in decline because of what the government did there. Jerry moved to Vancouver, where his mental health deteriorated day after day, and we witnessed it. We witnessed it here on this show. For 2.5 years, I had Jerry on the show as my guest during the Martin medical moment, where maybe I shouldn't have, but we discussed how hard it was on him. Maybe that made it worse for him, I don't know. But he continued to decline and continued to decline. He spiraled down to the point where he got involved with hard drugs again. He was a previous hard drug gangbanger here in Vancouver before he got clean, went back to Whitewood and started his dispensary and was living an amazing life doing that. When I posted that on one of the threads, Cindy said to me on the post, you know, it was that girl that got him into those hard drugs. And I'm like, sure. But he never would have been with that girl. He never would have made those choices. He wouldn't even have been here in Vancouver had the government not done what they did and ruined his life. And now he's dead of a fatal overdose of fentanyl. We don't know how or why that happened, but it's not surprising. Jerry was a pioneer, one of the best that we had, really. I mean, sure, he had some issues, and maybe his last initiative to open a drugs store and provide tested hard drugs to people, maybe that was misguided. Maybe he was the wrong guy for it. But he still did it because he cared, he had a vision, and he wanted to change the world in a positive way. It didn't go as he planned. They arrested him the same day. They harassed him repeatedly. They continued to seize whatever it was that he had. We all watched him spiral down into what eventually was his demise and his death. I'm extremely sad for Jerry and his family, and I'm extremely sad for all of us as Canadians that our government thinks that they can get away with doing this. And so far, for 100 years, they've been getting away with it. It is tragic, it is unacceptable, and I hope we can find a way to do something about it. And I don't think that something is to oust Trudeau, although that piece of crap should be ousted right away. He lied right to my face, he lied to all Canadians, and he brought in a legalization scheme for the rich, by the rich, at the exclusion of the people that need it the most. The most vulnerable and needy people in our society had the government's back turned on them, and they continue to suffer and die in horrible numbers. He needs to go. But the system needs to go. The system that would allow for such interference by large corporate groups and the wealthy needs to go. We need to have a government that is limited, accountable, transparent, and recognizing that their job is to stand up against the corporate influences and the wealthy that want to exploit us, and to protect the individual rights of every single person. That's what our public servants should be doing. That's what we expect them to do, and that is what they are not doing. In any case, I'm ranting on here, Glenn.
Yeah. I was thinking outside of the box there, and you know what Jerry did? The last good thing that he did? I think he whispered into Leo Lasseur's ear, who had Rick Walker's ear, and because Rick Walker had read the story about Jerry, we got onto his show. So I think that would have been Jerry's, maybe his last final good act of having to help you get out there and have more people find out about the CSP. When I was driving here, I thought about that today. How did that come about, right? We know that we got to thank Leo for doing this, but Leo had Rick's ear. He's known as the mouth of the South on the show and stuff like that. He was on the show with us, so it was I think there.
And Jerry did something else too.
Did he?
That I didn't mention, that needs mentioning. Before he decided to work on safe supply of those hard and dangerous drugs, he was working on microdelics.
Yes.
Providing people access to the hallucinogens that help people so much that are suffering from depression, anxiety, pain, and addiction. The psilocybe, the LSD, the DMT, ayahuasca, those substances are nature's gift to suffering and struggling people. And they have been suppressed by governments who just don't want you to get better.
Yeah.
There's no reason for the government to use criminal sanctions against people that have mushrooms other than to stop them from getting better. Mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, help clear people's minds. They help people think clearer. They help people come to terms with some of the things that bother them that they can't think about otherwise. They have been so successful. In fact, even the Canadian government reluctantly has had to allow some people that are in the final stages of cancer and dying to have access to mushrooms. He's at least gotten us that far. We have a long way to go. But there is no logical justification for denying human beings, free human beings, access to these natural products that have been there in nature for all time and have been used for centuries by many cultures around the world, indigenous peoples and other peoples, to help them. The only thing that really is, when you analyze it down, is the government is trying to prevent thought crimes, trying to prevent people from thinking in certain ways that actually make them smarter and clear their mind of all the rot that's there because of government propaganda and the government misinformation that we deal with all the time. We are witnessing a government that is now in a series of governments that have been lying to us about cannabis for over 100 years, and they've been lying to us about those psychedelics as well. For 100 years, they stood on the fact, or on their fact, which is not a fact at all, that cannabis was dangerous. Up until the 60s, the thing was, cannabis made people violent and insane. We all know that can't be the truth at all. Those peace-loving hippies were all about cannabis. They weren't violent, they weren't insane. In fact, much of what the hippies were proclaiming back in the day have turned out to be the absolute truth as we've moved forward. We are not free here. We are under the thumb of the corporate bastards, the greedy corporate scoundrels that don't want us thinking too straight about how much fees we're paying, about how much taxes we're paying, about all of these other things that they do. They keep us so distracted and overwhelmed and confused. They like to have us drunk. They like to have us angry. And this is what we're battling. 100 years of this. And Jerry was right there, one of the best we had in trying to help with that. Unfortunately, his return to the hard drug use, the depression and mental illness that followed, did not make him much of an asset to us in this anymore. And that's the government's doing. Had he been left to his own devices, he would have dramatically changed the world in much better ways. I mourn the loss of Jerry. I mourn it for all of us as Canadians. He was somebody that really was going to make a difference. I hope there's more Jerrys out there that can help us do that.
Somebody's asking, was Jerry's stuff a medical thing or recreational? The microdelics.
Oh, microdelics was all about medical, for sure.
Medical.
It was all about helping to treat people's depression and anxiety.
I found 3 big boxes of it today when I was packing.
Did you?
Yeah, 2 orange ones and 1 green one.
I see.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, no, he was all about ending the prohibitions on these things so that people could have access to them to help themselves.
Yeah.
It was all about helping ourselves. Jerry wouldn't have been pounding the drum for something that doesn't have medical value, and that's the truth with the hard drugs too. There's no good or bad drugs. There's good and bad relationships with drugs. Fentanyl is a great drug if you're having your leg amputated for a very short period of time. It's a hell of a painkiller. When used properly, it has great medicinal value. All of the opioids do in that respect, but the opioids are not designed for long-term use. They're not designed for recreational use, that's for sure. They're not used recreationally by hardly anybody. I mean, yeah, there's college parties, and people will do a little hit here and there, and along the way a bump of this or a bump of that, and almost everybody rejects daily use of those substances. The ones that stay on it are the ones that have serious issues with pain and depression and anxiety and those sorts of things. They're the ones that they find relief through those substances, and they stay with them. If they had the option of high-dose edibles, they would find relief through the high-dose edibles to just about, and even in some cases more extent than the other hard drugs and the opioids that do that. And high-dose edibles are not addictive. High-dose edibles will not kill you. High-dose edibles do not mess up your bowels and mess up other parts of your operating system. But they're not available because the government doesn't want you to have them. There is no other excuse for it. And here, with what the government is saying to us about not allowing people to have access unless there's a doctor supervising the use because high-dose edibles can be dangerous, well, they're full of crap on that. No doctor can tell you what your dose is anyway. All a doctor would reasonably do is something that could be written on the package. Start low, go slow.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you take too much, you're not going to like it.
No.
If you take more than you should, you're going to have a very uncomfortable time of it. It will not kill you. There will be no long-term health deficits because of it.
No.
But you won't like it very much, and you might never do it again because of that, and that's a shame, because at the right dose, there's something there for everyone who's suffering with those sorts of things. So.
And the most common thing is your body feels really, really, really heavy, and you can't move. A lot of people report that, and that's the scary
They
thing.
hang on to a pole.
Yeah, that's the scary thing that scares
Can't
people
get out of
from
bed.
doing edibles, because they did too much, and then they get that feeling, and
head is
they
thick,
feel like they're paralyzed, they can't move, their body is heavy, and yeah, they come out of it within 12 hours or something like that, but that's usually what that effect is what scares the hell out of people, and they don't want to do it again. So
Yeah.
then
So, you don't need a doctor to supervise your use.
Yeah.
All you need to do is be careful about not taking too much.
yeah.
And if you do, you'll be fine. Go back and use the right amount. But anyway. I have some good news.
Good.
Some good news.
Good news.
I'm not sure if we talked about it on last week's show or not, but there's a strain of cannabis out there called Haley's Comet.
Yes, we've
Many
heard of it.
people are familiar with that.
Yeah.
Haley's Comet is a high CBD strain that was specifically genetically bred
Yeah.
to be able to have what was necessary for a young lady named Haley Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Haley Rose had debilitating epileptic seizures all of her life. I've known Haley for many years. All the time, anytime I've ever met her, she was in a wheelchair. She could barely communicate. She was constantly being afflicted with these grand mal seizures and other things that were just devastating to see, and devastating to her physically and mentally as well, as they always are. And so she's in her 30s now, and her mother has been fighting the government for years to be able to use cannabis for Haley, and has done it illegally for much of that time, but wanted to do the right thing, wanted to be legal, and she's been fighting to do that. She finally was able to give Haley raw cannabis juiced.
Oh, nice.
And in a very short period of time, Haley turned right around.
Wow.
It's incredible. I cried tears of joy when I saw what was sent to me by her mother.
Wow.
Where Haley is out of her wheelchair. She's wearing nice dresses. She's going to museums and art galleries and enjoying her life for the first time in about 30 years.
Because she's not having seizures anymore.
Because the raw juiced cannabis is preventing her seizures and or cutting them down to almost nothing.
Yeah, and that doesn't even get her high because that's a different kind of cannabis. So
you don't get high on drinking.
No, they get what is it, CBDN or something?
No, yeah, it's before it's decarboxylated. The THC is THCA, on plants,
THC.
and then it's decarboxylated into THC delta 9. So. And no reason to make this illegal, ever. No reason to prevent access to this for people that are suffering, especially the epileptic people. No reason to make CBD illegal. It's not even euphoric in any way, shape, or form. You can't even get high. All it does is make you feel better. And the government won't allow you to have it. A natural product that's been used for thousands of years throughout all of the cultures on the planet. And the government thinks it's worth using our tax dollars and the criminal law to prevent people from accessing this. It was only just THC originally. That's all they cared about. They just don't want you getting high. Well, what's wrong with getting high? Why would high be a crime?
Yeah.
Being high means
I'm
you're
high
really...
right
I'm high. I'm not.
I know, but I just smoked.
I'm not feeling very high. I mean, I'm sure you noticed that I didn't partake in the 420 session.
No.
I've not been feeling very good for the last 4 or 5 days. Like I say, this whole last week and a half has been a hell of a emotional roller coaster for me.
But I can be your producer and guest and still be high. High
doesn't mean that you can't function.
Exactly.
High doesn't mean that you're an imbecile.
Yeah.
High just means you're high on life. You're loving the music. You're loving the sunsets. You're loving your girlfriend. You're loving... That's what... Cannabis is the love drug. The hippies, remember? Love and peace. Mm-hmm. That's what cannabis is all about. And that was THC. THC is just one of multiple molecules on the cannabis plant. It's the one that makes you feel a bit euphoric. The other ones, they help with a variety of different things, from sleep disorders to mood disorders to many other things like that. When you're turning to a herbal remedy, it's because you're not feeling good. So if you're going to take some cannabis because you're not feeling good, and you hope it's going to help you with your inflammation or your insomnia, your mood or whatever it may be, you're not feeling good. So Mother Nature, the great God of this universe, whoever, however, whatever, provides a remedy for that along with the remedy for the inflammation or the insomnia or the pain. It provides euphoria. Just a little bit of feeling okay. A little bit of distraction, a little bit of humor, a little bit of way of looking something that looks a little more beautiful than it did before, because it didn't look that beautiful. You can look at a flower when you're not feeling good, and sure, it'll cheer you up a little bit. But when you take some cannabis and someone gives you some flowers when you're not feeling good, wow, you love those flowers. You love the smell of those flowers. You can really appreciate the beauty of those flowers way more than you could when you weren't feeling good. Cannabis, THC, is not something that should be prohibited, not something that the government should be worried about, not something that you should avoid, simply something that's there for you, provided in nature, should you require it. So all of this 100+ years of a war against THC has been an absolute abomination and a travesty for sure. And then along comes CBD. Mm-hmm. CBD became recognized as something that would help but not get you high. Another molecule of the cannabis plant. It helps with all those medical issues, but you don't get high. Not everybody wants the euphoria, so that's great. But why then would the government decide that CBD should be just as illegal as THC? What are they basing this on? Where are there any studies or anything to show that there's anything for the government to be concerned about in sick people accessing CBD? There is none. All of the studies, all of the inquiries into it, all of the anecdotal evidence is all about how well CBD works for people. Yet it's now included with THC in fact, it's all just cannabinoids now. All the cannabinoids, anything to do with cannabis, is either illegal or legal in the government's legalization, but still not where it should be as far as a commodity that should be encouraged amongst people that are not well, because the pharmaceutical industrial complex has their claws all over us, and they don't want us using things that are natural, things that you can get out of your garden. They want you using their pills at the high price that they charge for them. So, another little rant.
And you might live longer too.
And you might live longer, in which case the government has to pay you out a bunch of benefits.
Yep. So, I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know either, Glenn.
It seems pretty strange. Jay Frost says that you're losing some weight and you're fighting the system too hard. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
It has been a very frustrating run, for sure.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
It has definitely taken its toll on me and continues to do so.
Yeah.
I'm a person that was very fortunate in my life to be able to accumulate a bunch of different strategies for dealing with stress.
Yep.
It's what's allowed me to do this to the point that I'm doing it. But I'm not immune to stress. And as I've been told recently with some massages that I've had, that there's a lot of stress being held in my body.
Wow.
That, and I'm like, yeah, well, I don't let it into my brain.
Yeah.
So, I hold it in my shoulders and I hold it in my back, and there's a lot of knots and there's a lot of stuff in there. It has affected my eating habits, and yeah, so thanks for noticing that. Jay Frost there, thanks for pointing out that I'm losing weight here and not as strong as I used to be, I guess.
Don't you go getting sick on us, he says.
It could be old age too,
Yeah, it could be old age, yeah.
Because this journey of mine is now in its 25th year. And I never thought it would take more than 10. And I recognized pretty quickly off the bat that this is a very taxing journey that I'm on here. Mm-hmm. I've watched many activists over the years come and go, get burned out, can't take it anymore, and I really understand why they feel that way. I feel it too. Yeah. But I'm not about to give up, and I'm going to try hard not to get sick on everybody.
Yeah,
and
you're still here every week.
I'm still here every week. Not feeling great today, but
you're
I'll be
still
all right.
here. You got a smile on your face, right?
Well, a smile is medicine. Yeah. Laughter is medicine.
Yeah.
Feeling good is medicine. Having a mission to accomplish is medicine. And I do have a mission to accomplish, and I'm not about to stop until it's over, one way or the other. And I'm pretty convinced I'm going to win, or that we are all going to win. I mean, it's not a solo battle.
No.
Jay Frost knows well about it. He's on his show out in Newfoundland every day, twice a day. How many shows are you at now? Put it in the chat there.
How many? Okay, well, all right. You want me to type it in there? How many shows a day are you doing?
Oh, he's watching the show. He'll
right. You want him to answer there?
Yeah, I want him to answer how many shows he's done.
Gary says hello too.
Hi, Gary. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Yeah.
What we do have is each other.
I think Jay Fox does 2 or 3 shows a day. I'm not sure. He started out a lot more and doing more, but since he's got a family now, I think he's doing less.
He is a workhorse and a half, I'll tell you.
I know. Was 3 now. With my son, I take a few days off weekly. See, family life does change you.
And how many total shows, Jay?
It's for the better. It's for the better.
How many total shows, Jay? You have that number?
Yeah. He has that number. We just gotta wait for him to hear it. He's gonna type it in.
He's probably going for 10,000 or something like that.
I don't know. Yeah.
We're I think 3 away now from 200. And that seems to me like an awful lot, I'll tell you.
Episode 197. We have 3 more to go.
Well, so 2 more and we're at 200. And then I think 2 or 3 more episodes after that, it'll be 4 years.
Wow.
And, I don't know how he does it out there.
Ready? Show number 4,430. He's almost at the 5,000 mark.
We're at the 4-year mark. He's at the 4,000 mark.
Since February the 11th of 2018.
Wow.
Great
job,
buddy.
Great job. That's amazing. I've had the privilege of being interviewed on his show a couple of times, and I can't thank Jay enough for doing what he's doing.
Just so people know who we're talking about, Jay Frost, he's in Newfoundland. He's on the island. He's on the way east coast. We're on the west coast. So
I guess there's not as much to do there in Newfoundland as there is here in Vancouver.
Oh, it's apparently a great big island. Like it takes you 6 hours just to drive to one place.
Well, I know, but I'm just trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Old man joke.
It's definitely not Victoria. which is an island too, right? So yeah, wow, eh?
Crazy stuff. So yeah, we're gonna have Haley Rose on the show. She was gonna come on today, but she had other prior commitments that they realized, so she couldn't. We'll see at which point they do come on, and we'll talk to her about all of that.
When you find out, let me know. I can paste it a few days, post it a few days ahead, and people will come and tune in. Even know we'll know more to tune in.
Yeah, we'll put it out there that she's going to be on the show, and that's going to be an amazing show. I'll try to stay composed, but I'll tell you, for me to see this young lady, to see her going to be able to sit here without her wheelchair and be able to talk fluently, is going to be a very big moment for me in my life.
We have a lady like that in Mission. Her name is Sarah. Right. Same thing. Sarah could not go out. Her mom had to take care of her. She was always at home having seizures. Now that she's on the full extract cannabis oil, she goes to art shows and goes shopping, and her mom now has a life, right? So yeah.
Yeah, Haley is not alone.
No. It's amazing,
she's just one of the more high-profile ones, and one that I personally have been quite familiar with. They're in Vancouver here in the Lower Mainland, and so I've known her mother, and I've known her for a long time, and it just you know, I want to cry tears of joy. I can't contain myself very well about it. This young lady, to have her life back like that, and then really what makes me want to cry is tears of sadness about how the government has prevented this from happening to her years and years ago.
Yeah,
and they're still fighting.
Yeah.
The thing now is microgreens, tiny little cannabis plants that were these really fresh, immature cannabis plants have a lot of medicinal value, and yet the government is still restricting her access.
Clones, basically
clones, I guess. Clones, you grow them in a large vat, very small. You let them get about this high, and then you cut them down, and it's microgreens, and have been proven to be very, very effective for people, especially in the situation of Haley. Yet the government is still restricting access and actively fighting against it.
Wow.
I mean,
wow, eh? Because they don't want people to be healthy. They want people to support their pharmaceutical companies that they support and that run the government through it, or the money that does. Like, it's crazy.
I'm going to be very angry.
Now they're going after the natural health people.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, so they're going after them now. I wonder where they got the money to do that. Maybe from selling some vaccines. Really.
Well, maybe that's what Trudeau's using his $448 per pound of legal cannabis sales to do.
Yeah,
I doubt it.
It's crazy. Like,
it's probably using it for his personal vacations.
You tell us we can't have natural health products. That's.
We've been exposing the corruption of the government for all the time we've been doing this show for almost 4 years now. And during that time, we've watched it get more and more blatant. Not less and less, but more and more. The pandemic really brought out a lot of that, of exposing just how powerful the government is and how uncaring they really are, and who it is that they really care about. The measurements taken by our government have enriched wealthy corporations massively. You look at the groups that made money because of the pandemic and those that lost money. Most small businesses, many of them out of business now, lost a ton of money. There's people trying to recover from tens of thousands of dollars of losses because of unnecessary lockdowns and other restrictions that were put on them. And the ones that got rich were the real friends of government, the real supporters of government, the ones that were supplying the masks, that were supplying this and that.
Yeah.
And they've gotten very rich out of all of this, and it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
So much of it is disgusting, and I'm not feeling very good. And when that's the case, I'm kind of on the edge emotionally.
Yeah.
So maybe we should try to have a little more positive conversation.
Sure.
I don't know what that is.
BC Bud Day coming up.
Yeah, and that should be a positive thing. But with what the government did on Cannabis Day, we're concerned that they might just do the same thing again.
They might. Is the fence down yet?
Yeah, they took the fence down.
Okay.
Stayed up there for a week, which was good because it gave me an opportunity to put some signs up about what was going on there. Explaining to people. I still meet lots of people, and I say, what the government did for Cannabis Day? Oh, what did they do? They put a fence around Thornton Park. Is that why that was there? See, they don't know.
Yeah, but also by leaving it there for the week, they now misdirect information or the look, saying it wasn't just us.
Yeah.
Because they didn't remove it the next day when we were gone. They produced that story on the SkyTrain, and that loud noise that we heard that day was there to deter people from hanging around there. So now they could say, well, we put that there and the fence so they wouldn't be in the park away from the noise, which would not deter them because they were farther away from it.
But they didn't really have to say anything because nobody really questioned them, and the media wasn't questioning them. They just put in this anti-people noise machine outside the station there, and we went on ahead with our day anyway. We set up the stage outside the fence at the SkyTrain station, and there was several vendors, brave souls, that stuck it out for the day there with us, with all those police there, and those police were brutal. They were intimidating. They were nasty, and yet a bunch of us stayed there and still had our cannabis day. But they did so much damage in that. And we're not on a positive conversation. Right?
I tried. We're talking about BC Bugger,
Yeah.
So
there's thousands and thousands of people that come to these events, 420 and Cannabis Day. Literally thousands of people. They come from miles and miles around. And they come there because they can access cannabis, especially high-dose edibles, low barrier access to cannabis. And they were shut out. There was no cannabis given or sold to people on Cannabis Day because the cops were right there at every table. The minute there was any sign that anybody was going to get out any cannabis and give it to somebody, they were right there swarming them. They used our tax dollars and brute force to prevent what would have been thousands of people coming and accessing, low barrier access and high dose edibles. The vendors that are there, most of them, not all of them, most of them probably don't pay tax on the sales that they make because there's no real structure for them to do that in Canada. They wouldn't mind paying taxes if they could not be illegal and worrying about criminal prosecutions against them. But those people also, many of them, had prepared for Cannabis Day, had made a whole bunch of stuff that they were going to have available to people, and they were going to use that money to help feed their families and pay their rent in an extremely tough economy that's going on right now. There's people going under every day. There's people losing their housing every day. And so, this is an opportunity for some people to catch up, to get some money in, and they stopped all of that. Those thousands and thousands of people that come to these events, 420 and Cannabis Day, they spend money in the neighborhood. They spend money at restaurants and other places in the city. There is a lot of commerce that happens on Cannabis Day that was shut right off because of what the government did there. So I think that Mayor Sim has an awful lot to answer for the damage that he caused to the thousands of people that he caused it to by doing what he did to try to do what? I'm not sure. I mean, he wants to be the cool mayor. Well, you're not very cool when you shut down Cannabis Day, I'll tell you. Yeah. You think you're cool by standing up on a stage and chugging beer? That's not cool. That's not cool for the children to see. That's not what we want out of our mayor. That's why it went viral.
Oh, yeah.
Any other idiot gets up there and chugs a beer in public. They probably get arrested for it or something, but they don't get a video that goes viral. Yeah. But when you're the mayor of a major city and you do something horrible like that, oh yeah, it's going viral. Everybody wants to see that idiot. And so yeah, I have zero respect for Mayor Kim and the ABC, or Mayor Sim, sorry, and the ABC party that are standing alongside of him. I don't know what to think about Rebecca Bly. She was an ally of ours. She's the one who passed the motion to unanimously support low barrier access. And now she's silent. She doesn't respond to my letters, my calls, anything. I've asked for formal meetings with the mayor and herself. No response. This is the response we get. A fence goes up to shut out our event. 40 or 50 police officers are deployed at double or triple time, whatever they get on a major holiday like that. That's the response. I don't know what to think, but I am appalled by Mayor Sim and the ABC party here in Vancouver. They can't get voted out quick enough at this point. How much more damage can they do? What they've done with the street sweeps. You might think, not being from the neighborhood, not witnessing what exactly goes on here, that he's done a good job of getting rid of the tents on Hastings Street. There was an abominable situation with all of those tents. That was unacceptable. You can't have hundreds of homeless people setting up tents in front of businesses on a main street. You can't have that. But the way you deal with it is not the way he dealt with it. You can't just take garbage trucks and police officers in a big gang and go and seize everybody's tent and belongings, throw them into the garbage, and make the people move along. To where? They had no place to go. Until you have a proper plan in place, you can't be dispersing these people into the ether, because they don't just disappear. Now we've got the mayor of New Westminster complaining about all of the homeless people that have shown up there coming from Vancouver to get away from Mayor Sim, and they're experiencing the same kind of problems in New Westminster and other municipalities around here as what we had here, because that's his solution. We'll just kick them out, move them along, and we don't care where they go, and we don't care what happens to them.
Yeah.
The situation was appalling for sure, but the people in those tents were human beings, and not your average human beings. They're human beings that have suffered way more than most of us have suffered. That's how they ended up there. Most of them are suffering from childhood trauma, primarily incest and family sexual abuse, but way more than that. The death of their parents or other traumatic events that have happened. These are trauma victims that find themselves unable to be employed, unable to stay in relationships, unable to find housing, in many cases unable to even qualify for the services that our governments offer them because they can't meet this requirement or that requirement or get over this barrier or that barrier. So many people get nothing. You think they're all on welfare? No, they're not. They don't have addresses. They can't get welfare. They don't get much help from the government at all. They get help from services, people, ordinary citizens and groups that come down here and provide leftover food and other things like that to these people. It's an abominable situation. And for him to do what he did there already made him the worst mayor in Vancouver's history. For him to do what he did to the Cannabis Day protests, wow, that's really over the top. That is really no fun city, Vancouver. And this mayor should have been charged. Those police that were there that day at Cannabis Day, if they had half a brain, if they really understood what their role was supposed to be as peacekeepers in a free and democratic society, that mayor would have been put under arrest. That is a criminal misuse of public funds. That is a definite abuse of power. That is contempt for the populace, the thousands of people that would take part in that. He needs to be arrested for that. But it doesn't happen because they're all in it together. They're all complicit. They're all taking their paychecks and turning their face the other way. They don't want to know. They don't want to think. They just want to get paid, and they don't care. So I'm not a happy camper today.
I know that.
I'm not a happy camper today.
It's probably not smoking is not helping either.
That is true.
Because we get a little edgy when we don't smoke. I even get a little bit edgy.
Well,
and hyper and stuff.
It's not about not smoking. It's about getting edgy because of what's going on.
Yes.
I'm an empathetic person, and I feel the pain of the people, and I feel, and I see the results of these government actions, and I extrapolate to what that means, and it bothers the heck out of me.
Oh, it's bothering me too. Yeah.
It can really make me, an angrier person than I normally am. And I use cannabis. So I continue to saturate myself with cannabis, and it eases and dulls that anger. But it doesn't take it away.
No.
But it makes it so that I can at least deal with it without being angry. Because being angry is no way to deal with anything, right? When you're angry, you're not making good choices. You're not thinking straight. You're emotionally too attached to what's going on. So I like to keep myself a little bit at bay, to separate myself a little bit from the actual situation, so I can see it properly and think clearly as to what it is all about and what I can do about it. And cannabis really helps me do that. So it is a definite aid for someone like myself on the front lines of fighting a horrible war against staggering odds. It helps me do that. But when I feel like I've been feeling the last few days, it won't help me. Headaches are not something that cannabis has ever helped me with. I don't know why. Everybody's an individual. That's the way it is. Some people get their headaches helped by cannabis.
Yeah.
It doesn't help me.
If I smoke too much and haven't eaten, I get a headache.
Right.
And that doesn't happen too often, but it can happen.
Yeah.
And like I said, I could get pretty edgy if I don't smoke. But then again, if you don't smoke for 2 or 3 days, that seems to go away too. It's just because you don't have that. It doesn't last forever. It's not a permanent thing that you've got because you've been smoking cannabis. It's just you've taken away. It'd be like chocolate. If you weren't eating chocolate for a few days or having coffee, God, imagine if you didn't have coffee for a few days.
I don't drink coffee.
Well, I don't either, but I have espresso in my shots, in my ice cap, so I do get one thing of caffeine.
I've seen other people have bad results from not getting the coffee that they normally have.
Oh yeah, I don't have the coffee.
It's a fairly addictive drug for sure that has definite side effects to quitting and what have
I've
you.
been lucky. I just take it in the morning and that's it gets me through the day.
Well, I don't know what else I got, Glenn.
You don't know what else you got.
I don't got much more energy, I know that.
You know? Well, we can call it an early.
We can pretty much do that.
Yeah, we want to do that? All right.
Let's
You
do
wanna
our
go
normal
outside?
thing. Yeah, we'll go outside, but first I'm going to do my regular summaries.
All right, you do that. All right. See you next week.
He's saying that to you people.
Yeah. And you.
I'm going to see you here on Thursday when you're working in the R&D. So you're going to see me more than just next week.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Well, the journey has been this. About almost 25 years ago, after being a cannabis consumer for most of my life, I was just a person in the mainstream working as a restoration expert with a family. And my son turned 16 in 1999. And he wanted to smoke some cannabis with his dad. And that led me to feel that my son was about to be oppressed the way that my life had been by these laws. And I was very concerned and worried about that. But the universe provided an answer in a poster that we saw a few days after him wanting to smoke with me, talking about a protest to do with these laws happening on April 20th at the Art Gallery. So we went to that. And we subsequently went to every other 420 Cannabis Day, Global Marijuana March, and protests that happened since. I don't think I've missed any of them, except for 2015 Cannabis Day, where they arrested me and I spent most of that afternoon in jail. But otherwise, my journey has been one of trying, for the sake of my son and the generations to come, of trying to undo these extremely unjust laws that we are saddled with here in Canada with respect to the attempt to prohibit the use of cannabis. In 2004, I entered into a partnership with David Malmo Levine and we opened Vancouver's second dispensary, illegal dispensary. The other one was the Compassion Club that had existed for a few years under great threat and duress to try to keep going on a strictly medical model of dealing cannabis to people that were very sick and in need, all with doctors on board with them. When we opened the Herb School, the Vancouver School of Drug War History and Organic Cultivation, we used a different model to screen our customers. They had to be over the age of 16 or they had to bring their parents or guardians with them. If they were over the age of 16, we would dispense to them if they could answer a few skill testing questions that they would have gotten the answers to on our drug war history walking tours that we were doing. It was a recreational model in that we weren't requiring medical oversight for the purchase, but there is no such thing as non-medical use of cannabis. In fact, even recreational is a subset of medicine in that it's preventative medicine. It's what people do to unwind after a hard day's work or to unload a bunch of stress. You recreate, and that's why they call it recreational. So we were providing cannabis to people, and the place that we were doing it from was right here on the downtown east side, right at Main and Hastings, just down a little bit from Main Street on Hastings. That's an area known as the largest drug dealing corner in North America. Hard drugs, not cannabis. Although there was the cannabis corner on the other side where there was a few indigenous people that would be there all day providing cannabis to some of the people that wanted it there. And mostly what they had was shake that they were getting out of garbage containers that people were just throwing away because they didn't understand that all of the leaves and even the stems have cannabinoids on them that you can get off and then use for making extracts. So they were just throwing that stuff away, and that was available on the corner. But then David came along with his idea of opening this herb school, of pushing the envelope, knowing that we would be arrested for it, and wanting to take his case to the courts. During our time there, unexpectedly, we were helping people get off of hard drugs. Lady Marijuana, with her cakes and brownies, became very popular for people, from the neighborhood that were on hard drugs. And then many of them would tell us about how a couple of good strong brownies could get them through the whole night. And then it put them on a different path. And then after a while we were being told that they'd been using cannabis to get right off of those drugs. And that's all they were using. And the mantra of "cannabis saved my life" became very popular amongst the people that we were helping. That herb school lasted 3.5 years before they arrested David and the others and essentially shut it down. But during that time, I certainly learned about how high-dose edibles gets people off those hard drugs by helping people through withdrawal. So you fast forward to 2016, and we have another healthcare crisis of overdose going on. Back in 1999, it was China White. Actually, I think that was fentanyl too, but they called it China White. A much, much stronger version of heroin. And that's what was causing most of the overdoses. In 2016, it hit again. And towards the end of 2016, in November, I went and pitched the idea to Vandu to make it as easy as possible for people to get high-dose edibles. I also pitched it to City Hall shortly after that and to the Vancouver Police Department. And within a few months, we had enough donations in, and we had tried our best to get the city to support us with no luck. So we just started handing out high-dose edibles. Care packs of 4 to 6 edibles and a couple of joints per person. 200-300 people would line up twice a week to get those. After we'd been doing it for 2.5 years, the City of Vancouver then passed a motion, thanks to Rebecca Bly, to allow for low barrier access to cannabis and high-dose edibles. So after meeting with her, a number of us, and having an understanding that we should find a storefront and move into that and get our people so they didn't have to line up on the street anymore. It took us about a year to convince a landlord to let us do that. And we opened this store here, called it the Healing Wave. For 5.5 months, it was a beautiful thing in the middle of hell. We had a little paradise, a safe space that people could come and feel dignified in getting what they needed for themselves and getting off of those hard drugs and beating their addiction. Hundreds of people had done that by that time. But the city didn't support what we were doing in the storefront. The licensing department had something to say about it. They said Canada had to lead the way and that what we would need is a provincial license before we could operate. And the provincial license would not allow us to have high-dose edibles and would not allow for low barrier access. So very quickly we shifted to applying to the federal government. And on September 16th, coming up 3 years ago, we put in an amazing application to Health Canada, full of testimonials from individual people who we'd helped, letters from Dr. Malloy, Professor Zachary Walsh, and others, speaking to the power of what we were doing, the value of what we were doing, the safety of what we were doing. So much in that application. But not so much that a mere high school student couldn't have had a look at it for a couple of hours and decided, well, absolutely this has to be part of the solution here. Let's at least find out if it works the way they say it does. Of course we're going to put a signature to a piece of paper and let these people continue what they have proven beyond any doubt is effective. But Health Canada didn't take a couple hours. In fact, they said that they would respond in a timely fashion because this was a time-sensitive issue. There's lives at stake. At the same time, we put in that application. Along with it, we put in an application for just a temporary exemption from the Cannabis Act. Well, the temporary exemption didn't come. The approval on our application didn't come. And it didn't come, and it didn't come. After about 3 months, a little more, Health Canada agreed to a conference call with my lawyer and some people from there, where the first thing they said was, "We're sorry it's taken so long. It's complicated." They later went on to say that they expected to have it worked out and licenses for us by early January. This was in December. Early January came and went, and then February, and then March, and then April. And then we started sending them studies that continued to come out, showing that absolutely cannabis, especially in the form of high-dose edibles, could offset the harms being done and get people through withdrawal from these hard drugs. We sent them study after study. They would answer back, "Oh, thank you for your submission. Rest assured that our team is working diligently on your file every day," said Mr. Benoit Seguin. Working how? Why taking so long? A team of people? Every day? For months and years? My goodness, what is that costing taxpayers? And for what? It's easy to say yes. It's easy to say, this is what you've been doing. You've had no problems. Continue to do it. There you go. No, that's not what they were working on. They weren't working on trying to figure out how to let us continue. All of their efforts, obviously, are centered around how to deny our application. How can we say no to these people? We felt the application was bulletproof. They couldn't say no. That would be like saying, we don't mind all these people dying. We're interested in protecting the health of the financial profits of the government monopoly. Because that's obviously all they cared about. Had they cared at all about trying to find a way to accommodate our solution, it wouldn't have been that hard to do. But time went on and time went on. And a year ago last April 22nd, they sent us their first intent to deny. They had figured out that if we weren't using all regulated cannabis, and if we're allowing people to access it that didn't have a doctor's permission, then they're not going to let us have that thing going on. And that was their intent to deny. So we answered them back. My lawyer at the time wrote them a long letter explaining the unacceptable stance of having to have a doctor on board with people that didn't have a doctor, couldn't get a doctor, wouldn't get a doctor, didn't need a doctor. We offered them several different options about how to provide us with a regulated supply. The first and best one, obviously, would be to allow us to keep doing what we're doing the way that we're doing it. There'd never been a complaint. Nobody had ever been harmed by the cannabis that we were providing. The suppliers were unlicensed, simply because they couldn't get a license. But they were people that were supplying us who wanted to help, that desperately wanted to feel like they were doing something about this crisis that in many cases had claimed the lives of a loved one or more. They deserve to be licensed. That's the best solution. License the current suppliers of our program and of our dispensary. Scrutinize them if you will, but reasonable standards to meet, and they would all meet them. And then they would be licensed and no longer criminals. And if not that, then, well, provide us with regulated cannabis that's coming from the already licensed producers that they have to destroy. We have the Craft Cannabis Coalition also seeking licenses for their craft growers, eager and willing to provide us with whatever cannabis was going to have to be destroyed because they grew too much, or for some of the other reasons that Health Canada makes these licensed producers destroy perfectly good, regulated cannabis for people, although I hesitate on the perfectly good. We all know that with Organogram, there's a lawsuit ongoing. There's many people who have been harmed seriously by their overuse of pesticides, fertilizers, and the like. So we weren't given that license by the city as we were told we would be. In fact, what we got was a letter to cease and desist, and our landlord got a letter that he would be fined and possibly even lose his property if he continued to allow unlicensed sale of cannabis from one of his properties. He didn't want to kick us out. He loved what we were doing. He gets it. But his lawyer convinced him that if he didn't at least try to evict us, then he was liable for some serious penalties. So we went through the motions. He didn't actually put any reasons for eviction because he didn't actually have any. He didn't think it would go through. Neither did we. We presented our application to the justice that oversaw the case. We pled our case to him, but he's one of theirs. And he decided that we were in his courtroom with unclean hands for having broken the law for those few years leading up to that. And he ordered that we cease and desist and exit the store within 1 week. Vacate the property. What a horrendous decision. It may haunt us as we move forward. A horrendous, horrendous decision. But we had no choice. The landlord agreed to keep renting to me as long as I agreed not to sell from the store. Good. Because we needed to keep renting the store, because that was the address on our application. But overnight, after we moved out, I went and bought an RV. Paul Hunt had an RV that he was willing to give me at a good price. And we moved into the RV and we provided options for people from that. For a year and a half, we operated out of the RV without any interference from anybody. Well, that's not true. 2 weeks after we moved into the RV, the anti-vending unit came along and saw what we were doing because we put signs up everywhere and we had the jars of cannabis visible in the windows. And they seized all of the cannabis and towed away, or told me to get the RV out of there or they would tow it. No charges. Never got our cannabis back. But I just drove it to the police station where I wanted to talk to a senior officer, but because of the pandemic, I couldn't do that. They wouldn't allow it. They said someone would call me. And then someone did call me and said, Mr. Magnuson, I have this file. What's going on? So I told her all about it. Candace Murphy was her name. I told her all about our journey, how many people we had helped, how we'd been doing it on the street for 3.5 years before we moved into the store. And she said, she listened intently and she oohed and awed all the way through it as I told my whole story, something like what I'm telling you right now. And in the end she said, oh, Mr. Magnuson, we're very sorry to hear about all that. We really hope you can get a license to be able to continue doing what you're doing. But in the meantime, you need to stop doing what you're doing until you have that license. I said, wait a minute, hang on a second. You just didn't say that to me. What, you didn't hear what I was saying to you during my explanation of what we're doing here? We can't stop what we're doing, or these people that are relying on us will go back to the poison drug supply in many cases. We have letters from doctors stating that. We have testimonials from the people we're helping stating that. Well, I don't care about any of that. Our job as police officers is to uphold the law, and you may not continue doing what you're doing. I said, well, I have no choice but to continue. And I don't know what choices you have, but you go ahead and do whatever it is you have to do, and we'll see what happens. She said, we will come and arrest you. I said, so be it. We're not stopping. Then a couple of weeks later, they sent a couple officers to sit in behind the RV and watch us. And at the end of the day, they asked to talk to me. A couple of police officers that did have a heart and a soul, that listened to the same explanation that I had given Candace before that. But they didn't take the same stance as her at all. They understood that what we were doing was very, very helpful to suffering and desperate people. And they left us alone. They left us alone for a year and a half. Working every day out of the RV. 8 hours a day. And then, a year ago last May, right out of the blue, all of a sudden we're surrounded by a bunch of unhappy looking VPD people. None of them willing to say that they were in charge that day. I'm sure most of them not happy that they were there at all. But they arrested me, although they didn't put me in handcuffs. They charged me by giving me a slip of paper that said that I was charged with selling cannabis without a license. Me and 2 of my co-workers. And they towed my RV away. So right away, as soon as the RV was gone, we set up a tent like we would at a rally, at a protest. And we began providing the same service that we'd been providing. The sale of low barrier cannabis and the giveaway of donated cannabis. We continued to do that for 4 or 5 weeks as I tried so hard to get some senior VPD officer to talk to me. That's a very difficult thing to do. They're quite insulated. They don't come out on the beat very much. Anybody that's a senior officer, a staff sergeant or beyond. But I went to the property office one day when they took our tent because it was so windy, and they said it was there and I could go get it if I wanted. We'd been doing it every day for 4 or 5 weeks with big signs plastered all over the tent talking about how horrible it was and what they were doing and shame on them. And I went to the property office to get the tent, but the tent wasn't there. So I asked to talk to a senior officer, and they provided me with a staff sergeant. So I sat down in a room with that staff sergeant and I said, what the hell are you guys doing? Why would you do what you did there? We're just helping people and we've been doing it for years. You all know who we are. I presented to the VPD board before we even started. He said, well, hang on a minute. He said, we found 21 grams of crystal meth in your RV. I said, like hell you did. If you found something like that, you planted it there. We would never have nothing to do with that. We're from this area. We see the effects of this stuff all over the place every day. We're trying to do something to counter that. We would never have that. I got quite upset. He said, oh no, I saw pictures of it. So it was in a little white, a glass jar with a white lid. I said, you're talking about cannabis concentrates. You're not talking about crystal meth. He said, oh, well, I guess we should get it tested. I said, yeah, I guess you should, eh? I said, I wouldn't want that to get out there because that is absolutely opposite of what we would be doing here. The very next day, I got a phone call from the VPD. Mr. Magnuson, you can come and get your RV back. They had told me I'd never see it again. That it was going to be proceeds of crime and used in the commission of a crime. They gave me my RV back. Of course, I parked it right here on the block like we had been prior to that for a year and a half. No more interference. There's been none. But charged with selling without a license meant going to court and pleading not guilty and being handed the Crown's disclosure. Crown's disclosure told us that they'd been running an investigation undercover for about 7 months. Surveying us with high-powered cameras, lots of pictures, sending in undercovers to purchase, but not asking to purchase, for any other needs of any sort. They just wanted to get our best. Give us your best. So we gave them the best. Our least is not far off of our best. The $1 grams that we sell here to people, where they can buy 5 $1 grams for $5 once a day per person, is darn good cannabis. Because we're not here to provide crap to people at all. The people here that we're trying to reach are the ones that really need help, that are suffering badly. They need good quality cannabis. And they get it. The other stuff that we sell that is our best, that is a little higher priced, although there's nothing ever been over $6 a gram, still seems pretty high to them. And that's their evidence against me. There's no victim mentioned anywhere in those hundreds of pages of disclosure. They talk about how I'm a greedy opportunist. Yeah, well, scrutinize my life. I purposely do this in such a way that I'm not getting rich because I don't want to ever be accused of that. We're trying to give back to this neighborhood. We're not trying to take out of it. It's a poor neighborhood. I don't live in the lap of luxury. I don't spend money on luxuries and things like that because I don't have it, and I wouldn't if I could. I wouldn't take it if it was there. Because this neighborhood is poor, and this neighborhood has people in it that need proper low barrier access. And if I'm going to get rich off of that, then that's obviously not providing proper low barrier access. So they're very wrong about that. And I really can't wait to get into court and refute that evidence or that statement. There's no evidence that I'm a greedy opportunist. I stated on the show a few weeks ago that yes, I am greedy. I want what I want. And what I want is reasonable government and reasonable regulations with respect to drug policy, especially cannabis. I want that with such great desire because I've seen firsthand the harm that it does. Some of it to my life, but most of it to the lives of all these people around me. And all the stories that I hear all the time as an activist with people contacting me and saying my life was ruined by these laws. And the people in the neighborhood that come and tell me my life was ruined because I went to jail for 6 months because I was found with a joint on me. It happens in Canada here. And after a few months of being in jail, didn't have housing anymore. Didn't really have friends anymore because you find out who your friends are when you go to jail. And they spiraled down into poverty, depression, and addiction because of it. So yeah, I'm very greedy. I want that to stop. I want that to stop with a passion. I want reasonable public servants, not brutal tyrant masters. I'm a patriot. I'm a good Canadian. I hate our government, but I love the people of Canada, and I loved what our reputation was throughout the rest of the world as being tolerant, polite, compassionate people. And I want that to be a reality, and I want it with a passion. I am very greedy about that. And I'm an opportunist. I seize on opportunities. I look for opportunities. And I have tried to take advantage of every opportunity that's come along over these last 25 years of my activism to get what it is that I'm greedy for. And if that's a crime, then I'm very disgusted with this country and our criminal justice system. I am not a criminal. I know what a criminal is. I was interested in law as a young man growing up. My dad wanted to be a police officer. Crime is when you intentionally cause significant harm to benefit yourself to others. That is what a crime is. That's the definition of a crime, except that in Canada and the United States and in other jurisdictions around the world, because of the US government, the DEA, and their war on drugs, they made it a crime to have possession of a few dried flower tops if it has THC in it. Not a crime. Not a crime to have possession of THC. No intent to harm anybody. No damage done. No victim anywhere. Yet still, because our government went from common law principles, which would have not allowed any of that, you would think, except they were doing it anyway. But then they changed to the rule of law. And the rule of law is they make the rules, you break the rules, you've committed a crime. Plain and simple. That power should never have been given to vulnerable public servants that had their access easily available to the corporate elite. We should not be living under the rule of law, where these immoral bastards get to make whatever rules they want, and we're criminals if we break them. We need to go back to common law principles, where they need to show beyond any reasonable doubt that you committed an act that did significant, demonstrable damage to others. You get to meet your accuser in the courtroom. The victim is someone you're supposed to be able to meet in the courtroom. None of that goes on here. Not with the cannabis laws. So, I'm a greedy opportunist trying to correct bad laws, and they're going to try to punish me and stop me as best they can with your tax dollars. That is disgusting. But in any case, we'll fight that battle when it comes up this coming October. In the meantime, we're still in the RV, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, offering the cannabis option, especially high-dose edibles, operating the Cannabis Substitution Program, which provides 420 milligrams of high-dose edibles for free to those people that are members, and also to anybody that comes that is not a member. They get a muffin, they get a joint, they get what they need to get through the day to the next day, and then they can do it again the next day. We don't turn anybody away here. They're all basically on a program themselves, really. And then there's the Healing Wave that supports all of it. The low barrier, low cost option. The way that we support the CSP, to give them a space to operate from, to make sure that they have what they need to do that they do. It's a collaboration that is necessary when you have costs. To maintain donations, and the program ran on donations for 3.5 years before we moved into the store. All on donations. A little bit of subsidizing by myself, but that's just a donation. All on donations. Difficult to do, I agree. It was hard to maintain, but we did it. But once we had the go-ahead from the city to move into a storefront, well, now there's costs like rent and hydro and staff, and that has to be covered somehow. And there's just not enough donations to cover those thousands of dollars a month that have to be covered. So that's why I structured this collaboration between the Healing Wave and the CSP, so that we could have a low-cost option that would still provide enough profit to cover the costs that were necessary to make it all work. It's a pretty good model. I've been doing it for over 3 years now, sustaining it fairly well. But that's what the CSP is all about. That's what we're all about. That's what we're doing and why we started and how we got here. And now our battle is in the courts with a corrupt, evil federal government that's in the pockets of the financial greedy bastards that really run the show around here. And we'll see what the judges have to say. I don't know. I'm confident, but I'm not confident. We've watched judges make bad rulings for a long time. If judges were really judges, if they could really judge a situation, they would have judged that the prohibitions against cannabis are completely unjustified, that they don't meet the common law standards of what it takes to be a crime, and they would not have done what they've done. So we're also dealing with a corrupt judiciary, and those are who we're laying our requests on now to make it right and do the right thing. God help us. I really hope He will. So, that's who we are, that's where we are, that's what's going on in the world of the Cannabis Substitution Program with the THC Show. We'll go outside for a few minutes and do a little live TV, reality TV of the RV and give you a little taste of that. And then we'll come back next week and we'll tell you where we're at. But at least things are changing in some forms. Maybe not for the good, but we'll see what happens. Maybe, because now we've got a final denial. Now maybe some of those other people in positions of influence will do the right thing and speak up on our behalf and defend us here. I sure hope so. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to count on the city anymore. The province has already proven themselves to be evil and corrupt with the CSU and Mike Farnworth. The federal government, oh my God, that they could deny what we have presented to them speaks volumes to how corrupt and evil they are. So I don't know how hopeful I am anymore. I'm shocked by a final refusal by Health Canada. I did not expect that. This show is about truth, hope, and change. My hope still exists. If it didn't, I wouldn't still be carrying on. But I'm still hopeful. My hope has maybe been diminished a little bit because I really thought that the way Health Canada would avoid court was to finally give us a license before that happened. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So to court we go. And we'll take our chances there, because what else is there? We're going to go to the courts and see if we can get an injunction against Health Canada and any enforcement of their refusal. And we'll see how that goes. And we'll update you as we go in the upcoming weeks. Let's go outside. The weekly THC weather report from downtown Vancouver is beautiful and warm.
And sunny.
Only a few clouds, some haziness, but mostly blue sky. It's been very nice for quite a while here. In fact, we're getting to the point where we could really use some rain. There's thunder and lightning going on in other parts of the province, and we're hoping that that doesn't spark a whole bunch of new fires. Already we've had the worst fire season in recorded history in Canada here. So a little bit of rain would be nice to have without the thunder and lightning. But meanwhile, here in Vancouver, all we got is sunny skies and warm weather. So let's go see what's going on in the... I guess I have some good news. On a previous show, we talked about how we had another break-in. The new window that I had just recently replaced was broken again. The RV was ransacked. We don't leave much of value in there at all, but whatever was in there has been taken. There's been several subsequent break-ins. Now there's this one here. Again, since they broke the window, over the course of the next 10 days, we had 4 other occasions in the morning where they had been in the RV, ransacking it to see what they could find. Nothing much, but anything of any value was taken. So I've installed a wooden barrier now, and the good news is we haven't had any break-ins since I put that in there, and I'll be putting another one on the other side as well, coming right up as soon as I find the time and feel good enough to do it. And we'll cross our fingers that they won't continue to break in. But in any case, that's what's going on. Good to see you.
See ya.
How's it going in there?
Going good.
I can't see you. You got to put your head out the window. All right. So here we are at the Cannabis Substitution Program. This is where we help people get off the opioids, provide them with the option of cannabis high-dose edibles to get them through withdrawal. And this is what the government doesn't want to have happen. And this is why we have to be out here in an RV instead of in a store where we could really have a face-to-face with people. Welcome to Weed World. Well, how are we?
Having a magical day. An utterly magical day.
Another absolutely, utterly magical day. Every day here is magical for sure. Lots of people very happy with what we're doing and thanking us and telling us don't stop. So I'm not sure what to do about that. When your immoral government tells you to stop, but the people that you're helping beg you not to, what would you do? I think we continue here. Any pertinent stories, things you want to add? Anybody want to be on the Pot TV?
They already are now.
Well, edibles are really helpful if you're having trouble getting sleep and not feeling well. And there's a summer cold going around, so, you know.
You're a little bit stuffed up.
No, I was just saying, if in case somebody happens to be...
You sound a little bit stuffed up.
Oh, I mean, if you happen to be, then you maybe do some edibles, and because you don't have to smoke, and then it's like...
And lots of vitamin C.
You know, yeah, and lots of vitamin C. Yeah,
and
exactly.
Kevin, how are you doing? Your day's been okay?
Yeah, it's nice and cool in
He's
the RV
phenomenal.
today.
Look at him. He's fantastic.
We got the windows open, you know, we're just staying cool.
Just
and
chilling in the RV, helping people.
helping people out, you know, giving out some free joints, giving out some free weed, you know, when we can, and yeah, just having a good day.
Good. And that's what we do every day. This is the same every day here, and at the end of every day, I say to them, or I say to myself, well, another day without a raid is a good day. And
Even days with raids sometimes, you know.
well, it's not as good a day for me anyway if we're raided.
No.
And now we're not sure, you know, if that's going to happen again. You know, are the VPD now going to get the same final refusal that we got, and they're going to be aware of that, and they're going to think that they have to come and shut us down or try? We'll see what happens. we'll make a big fuss of it.
Then I can give you one of these.
In the meantime,
There you go.
this journey that we're on is actually very rewarding. It's hard, it can be frustrating, it can even be a little depressing, but it is highly rewarding at the same time. And I recommend it to everybody. If you're not happy about the state of the world, try to do something about it. There are things that you can do. There's lots of things. Every individual has their own creative take on what could be done, on who to talk to, on how to talk to them, on what to say, on what to do. So whatever it is you can do, please do it. Write a letter, make a phone call, send an email, talk to the media, talk to your government, talk to your police, talk to your friends and family. Just let's all be part of the same movement, the same military force, if you will, in a loving way. We're not looking for a violent revolution. We're looking for a peaceful evolution based on truth, fact, on wisdom and ethics. Please be part of that. Do it for yourself. Because if you're frustrated with this world and what's going on, and you're frustrated with this legalization that is by the rich and for the rich, then what you can do is do something about it, and you'll feel better. And if you get some proper response like we do from your efforts, then you'll really feel better. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself. So as you go through your life, be kind, be gentle, be kind to everyone around you, especially those people that are hardest to be kind to. They need and deserve it the most. And mostly be kind to yourself, because it starts at home. Forgive yourself. Forgive others. Let's go into the future, not live in the past. And of everything that you do, make sure that you're having as much fun as you can, because that's the most important thing. We don't have a long time on this planet. Life is far too serious to take too serious. Have as much fun as you can. We'll see you next week.